So we already have our HTML templates. Now comes the hardest part, which is to actually replace the placeholders with the content. So let's actually start with the overview. And let's give ourselves some breathing space here and add some comments. So overview page, then some comments down here. So the product page, and then here we have the API. And then here we have the not found. All right, so that looks a bit better already. So again, we're starting with the overview page. And so the first step is to actually load the template overview. Okay, so each time there is a new request for this route, so just the root or /overview, the first thing that we're going to do is to read the template overview. But just like before, we can actually do that outside of this callback, okay? Because these templates, they will always be the same. So we can actually read them to memory right in the beginning when we start the application, and then when necessary, we simply go ahead and replace the contents in there. Okay, so just like we did with the data here. There's also no need to read the data each time there is a request, and the same happens for the templates. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and do it for all three templates here, so we have that out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this one, call it temp for template overview, and dir name, and here we have templates, and then /template overview. Okay, then duplicate this here twice. So we have one for the card, so template card, and then one for template product. All right. And again, keep in mind that we can do the synchronous version because we are in the top level code, which is only executed once right at the beginning when we load up this application. So we could not do this inside of this create server callback function, okay? Because this one is called each time there is a request. And if we had 1 million requests at the same time, then we would block the code 1 million times, once for each request. And that is something that we do not want. So the overview, let's actually go ahead and first of all, just to test it, send this temp overview as the response. Now, before we can do that, we need to go ahead and set this content type to HTML. So let me actually copy this piece of code here. So the status code is 200 and content type should be text/HTML. So restart the server here. And let's now take a look. And indeed, here we go. So here's our styled page that we already know from this one. Now what's of course missing here is these rows, and that's because we still have our placeholder. And so the next task is to now replace this placeholder with the actual cards. And how will we do that? Well, remember that in data object, we have an array of all the objects that are in data.json. So all of these 5 objects, all in JavaScript objects, because we already parsed this data, which is a string. Okay, so data object, again, is an array of, at this point, 5 objects. So what we have to do is to basically loop through this array, and for each of them, replace the placeholders in the template with the actual data from the current product. Okay, makes sense? So let's put that in code. So data object, we're going to loop through it with a map, because we want to return something. And that something we will save into a new array. So let's call that one the cards HTML. Okay, and so I'm sure you are familiar with the map method. Okay, so what map does is that it accepts a callback function, and this callback function gets as an argument the current element, so the element of the current loop, and whatever we return here will then be saved into an array. Okay, so let's say we're looping over an array with 5 elements, which is the case here, and for each element we will return something, and that something will then be put into the same position, but in this new cards HTML array. So what will we do in each of these iterations? Well, we want to replace the placeholders, right? And so I'm actually going to go ahead and create a function for that, and it will be called replace template. Okay, and replace template will take in the card HTML, so basically the temp card, and it will take in the current object, so element. Okay, so this element is what holds the data, right? So again, each of these is now an object which contains the data in each of these properties. Okay, and don't worry if it doesn't make 100% sense now. It will once we create this replace template function. Okay, so let's now actually do that up here as well. So replace template is a function which takes in a template. It's going to call it temp here, and of course a product. All right. So let's create a variable called output, and that one will be template.replace, and now our placeholder. And we're going to put here all of the placeholders that we have, starting with product name. Okay, and so that one will be replaced with product.product name. So product, which is this argument that we passed into the function, dot product name, because, well, that's the name of the field where the product name is, right? So go ahead and copy that one, and all right. Now, one small trick that we have to use here is to actually not use the quotes, but instead use a regular expression. And that's because there might be multiple instances of this placeholder. And so the trick is to basically wrap this in a regular expression and use the G flag then on it, which means global. And so this will make it so that all of these placeholders will get replaced and not just the first one that occurs. So this replaces the product name. Now let's go ahead and replace all the other one. So output equals output dot replace, and now we'll just go ahead and copy this to make my life a bit easier. So image, and it is called image, and not in uppercase, so just like this. Okay, now up here I created this variable because I wanted to replace this product name in temp, so in the argument, and it's not a good practice to directly manipulate the arguments that we pass into a function. And so I created a new variable, and from now on I will then manipulate that first one, okay? And so that's why it's not a const, but a let. So a let we can mutate after it's been created, okay? Now let me just go ahead, copy a couple of these. So price, and it's called price here as well. Then we have from. Then we have nutrients. Of course, I could copy all of these, but I'm not going to jump back and forth here. So quantity description, and I'm probably going to do some mistake here by writing all of this out manually, but in a small project that is no big deal at all. So actually this one we don't need, or actually we do need, because for the organic. So the organic is missing, but remember the organic was a bit special. So in this case, if product is not organic, so product.organic, if it's false, so remember that is actually a Boolean. So for example, we have organic true here, but we have false here. Okay, and so if it is false, well, in that case, we then want to replace the not organic. So the not organic placeholder with simply not organic. So not organic because this is the class name that I showed you earlier. So it is this one. Okay, so it will then be replaced here. Okay, and so again, in case it's not organic, well, then the class name not organic will be here, and this entire batch will then be not displayed. All right, makes sense? So let's see if it, sorry, the actual code is below it. So let's try to make more sense of it. So again, we loop over this data object array here, which holds all of the products. And in each iteration, we will replace the placeholders in the template card with the current product, which is element, right? And this arrow function will then implicitly return it here. So it's the same as having return here, okay? But it's not really necessary because in a arrow function, if you don't have the curly braces, this value here automatically gets returned. Okay, so just in case you didn't know that, I just remembered that we forgot to actually return the output from here. Okay, so of course, we input the template and the product, but then of course we have to output the final HTML, right? And so that then gets plugged in here. And so then finally all of this here will replace an array with the 5 final HTMLs, each for one of the 5 cards. So each for one of the 5 products. All right. Now let's actually go ahead and log this to the console before we put it on the overview web page. So cards, HTML, just to make sure that everything works here. Okay. So we need to reload the server. Don't forget that. This all works the same, but now let's take a look at the console. And I'm starting to see nice things here. So we have an array, and we actually have the stuff replaced. So we have some avocados here. It says here fresh avocados. It has the 4 avocados per box, the price. And yeah, that actually all looks very nice. And indeed, it's also an array. So we have this first figure, then a comma, and so here starts the next element, so the next figure. All right, so we have right now an array of all these elements. But what we want is actually not an array, but we want one big string containing all of these HTML. So that's actually very simple to achieve. All we have to do is at the end of this array, so we remember all of this here returns this array that we see down here. And so at the end, all we do is join by an empty string. And so this will join all these elements into a string. And so now cards HTML is truly a string. Okay, and so now we have our cards ready. And the last piece of the puzzle is to go ahead and replace that placeholder So this here, I'm actually copying it now. So now replacing this placeholder with the HTML that we just created. So let's call it output here. And all we have to do is temp overview, which is the string that holds the overview HTML, right? Dot replace, and replace it with cards HTML. All right, that's it. Now all we have to do is to actually respond with the output and not with whatever we had before. Okay, cool. So that looked a bit complex, but if you think about it, I hope that it makes complete sense to you. And so let's go ahead and test this now. And I hope I have no mistakes. And something went wrong. All right. So what's that? Okay, so I just misspelled replace. That's one of the most common errors I get all the time. Like some small spelling mistake. Reload, and bam, here we go. So here are our 5 rows. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now it doesn't quite look like the original one, because what's missing is like this organic here. Okay, so let's see what's wrong there. Also, for some reason, I don't see the quantity here, but only if it's not organic. Well, that's weird. So let's try to investigate what is happening here. So the error is probably somewhere here in this replace template function. But actually, everything looks kind of correct here. So also here on this not organic replacement. So let's take a look at our template card. And so I see here that when there's this not organic, well, actually this entire box here, so also this H6 will not be visible anymore. So something looks wrong here. Let's take a look at the original one, just to inspect the HTML here. So card detail is this one. And so we actually have 3 card details here, while in the template we only have 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this one. So in the DevTools, you can actually copy an element, and it will then, well, just like that, actually copy the entire element. So this is what it's supposed to look like. And so here it should say organic and not quantity per box. Okay, that one is probably the next one. So let's quickly fix that. And here, of course, we do not want that. And so, yeah, that looks better. Close it up, restart the server, and let's check that one out again. And now, bam, here we go. So now it's working. And indeed, it works exactly the same. Beautiful. So that is really nice. Let's just go ahead and delete, for example, the avocados, just to see what happens. And I'm just going to do Control X to cut it, reload it here, and it's not changing. And that's, of course, because remember that this data is actually only read in the beginning when we start the app. Okay, so in order for this to take effect, we do effectively need to restart the application. Okay, so no big deal. And now it's gone. Okay, because it's no longer in the JSON file that is read at the point of time when we start the application. Okay, let's put it back here, give it a save, restart, open this guy up, reload, and here it's back. So it's now really working dynamically by reading all this data right from the JSON file. So this one works. Let's check the links also down there in the left-hand bottom corner. You see that the ID changes from 0, 1, 2, and so on and so forth. But if I click this here, well, then we get page not found. And so that's because our route is not yet ready for this. Okay? And so let's actually do that in the next video and implement the product detail page for each of these products. So don't wait, and let's move on now.